An Ohio mother was reportedly trying to escape a dangerous situation with her two young boys, believing her husband was out of town. But police say he wasn't. And what happened next is a parent's worst nightmare. Police say he killed her two children, a 7-year-old boy and his baby brother, right in front of her. The devastating details of a case that has destroyed a family we are going to talk about, and we are going to break it all down with a retired detective commander. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Look, here's the truth as we're covering this kind of story. Staying on top of the news is so important, but with all the media bias these days, who knows what to believe? That is why I want to introduce you to our sponsor, Straight Arrow News, okay? So Straight Arrow News is a personalized news platform that gives readers fact-based journalism to inform and build trust. Its media mist tool shows readers headlines that are not seen in mainstream outlets, providing useful commentary that cuts through all of that sensational spin. Their site, their app, it also points out the bias with their media landscape tool to group sources by political leaning for full transparency. So if you're ready for a better way to get the news, go to san.com/sidebar. Just click the link in my description. This is Straight Arrow News. You skip the drama, you get the facts. Welcome back to trustworthy journalism. This is a video of two brothers, 7-year-old Ren pushing his 7-month-old brother August in a swing out in Tiffin, Ohio. Their mother shared this moment of pure joy on Facebook just days ago. But now she's living a nightmare after a horrific act of violence that has left an entire community in Ohio reeling. Police say this mother was in the process of finally leaving her home in Tiffin after domestic issues. She was there with the father of her eldest son, Dustin Willie, gathering their things while they believed her husband was out of town. But this husband, 42-year-old Ryan Egan, wasn't out of town. What happened next was an ambush that unfolded right in the family's driveway. Police say Egan emerged, immediately chased down Dustin, and shot him. He then turned the gun on his two children, fatally shooting both the 7-year-old and the 7-month-old infant before firing again at Dustin. And by the way, that 7-month-old was Egan's son. And in the end, 4 people were dead, and the mother was the only one left at the scene. And we're going to explain that a little bit more. So let me walk you through exactly what we know based on official police releases and the family's own heartbreaking posts in the days surrounding this tragedy. It all leads up to the evening of Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. According to local police in the community of Tiffin, Ohio, a mother was making what should have been a hopeful move. After what police described as ongoing domestic issues in the home, she decided to leave. So she was at her house on Huss Street, packing up her belongings with the help of Dustin. And Dustin, by the way, wasn't just a friend helping out. He was the father of her 7-year-old son, Ren. And the plan, according to authorities, was to do all of this while they believed her husband, Egan, was working out of town. So picture the scene for a second, okay? The mother and Dustin, they're inside the house. They're gathering the last of the items. And meanwhile, her two children are outside waiting near the car. Her two boys, again, 7-year-old Ren, who had just celebrated his birthday a few days earlier, and his little brother, 7-month-old August. 6:24 p.m., the entire plan shatters. Police say they were dispatched to the home after a 911 call reported gunshots and sounds of screaming. The caller, identified as a female and presumably the children's mother, was described by officers as physically unhurt, but in their words, quote, clearly in a state of shock, overwhelmed, and visibly traumatized. When police arrive, they find a scene of utter horror. They find an adult male, identified as Dustin. They find these two young boys, Ren and August, all suffering from gunshot wounds. And they see this mother. Now, August was pronounced dead at the scene. Ren, Dustin, they were transported to a hospital. But tragically, despite everyone's best efforts, both Ren and Dustin later died from their injuries. And outside the house, officers made another critical discovery. They located a second adult male, also deceased, and that was this husband, this apparent shooter, Ryan Egan. So what exactly unfolded in that driveway to lead to this? To help us break it down and all the evidence here and what this response must have looked like, I want to bring on a special guest, retired Detective Commander Will Svilar. Will, thank you so much for coming on. This is an incredibly difficult case. I imagine a very difficult crime scene to process. Let's go from the beginning here. What do you think was the first thing that likely signaled to responding officers that this was a domestic violence situation that had escalated? And how do you respond to these kinds of events?
In this particular case, there was a victim that was left alive. And I say victim because the mother is a victim. Let's not confuse anything. She's a victim. She was left alive. So I imagine she was very traumatized. I imagine she was in shock, but you still had someone that could kind of tell you what was going on. And then you just have to, once you try to aid the injured, once you try to mitigate any kind of threat that may still be on the scene, you got to slow things down, and then you got to start your investigation. But you're talking 4 victims, 2 went to the hospital, 2 were pronounced on scene, and a surviving witness. It's so difficult to talk about how you respond to something like that, or what you see, or what goes through your mind when you see something like that, especially when you're dealing with children.
100%, 100%. And this 911 call reported gunshots and screaming. It's kind of hard to process what that scene must have looked like and what that event must have looked like. But you have a sole witness here, right? You have this mother and how emotional that must be for her. How do you get information from a witness like that? I mean, if she, I don't even know how you even sit down with her, how you even try to get her recollection of what happened. I imagine there's an urgency in understanding what happened. I don't even know how you approach something like that.
That's going to have to be done by a psychologist or psychiatrist. Someone's going to have to get past the trauma. We as first responders, when we get there, our main priority is aid the injured. She had to have been taken to the hospital, had to be put under evaluation, medicated. And you really can't talk to people when they're in that state because it's just too injurious to them. And it's a possibility you're not going to get a bunch of information. Now, the 911 call tells the police that there's going to be potential for violence. Someone might be hurt. You get there, you see 1 body outside, 3 inside. Something really bad has happened there. I mean, let's state the obvious. Now, the woman's still alive, so she's possibly giving some information. But as far as eliciting any kind of a coherent or detailed account of what happened, you're going to have to get some help with that. As a first responder, we're just not equipped for that.
Yeah, I understand. And what's shocking? First of all, let me ask you this. Even when you have the suspected shooter dead, the investigation's not over, right? Why? What are they looking for? What's the next steps?
As a matter of fact, it's just beginning when you know that. Now, what you know there is you're probably not going to have a prosecution, but it doesn't mean you're not going to have an investigation. You have to make sense of what happened there. You have 4 bodies that you have to account for and how that happened. And in an investigation, the only difference between this investigation and an investigation where you're going to charge somebody is there's a criminal prosecution. There's no criminal prosecution in this case, obviously, but it doesn't change the investigation at all. You're going to handle it just like it's a homicide that you're going to take to court.
And they say, authorities say that this husband, Ryan Egan, the father of one of the children, they thought that he was going to be out of town, but authorities say the evidence suggests he was just lying in wait and in an ambush style attack. Is that something you've seen before in these domestic violence situations? You're talking about the idea of they're moving away, they're trying to get out of there, this level of premeditation, state of mind. Is that something common in your experience?
Jesse, there is no more volatile situation than a domestic situation. Because if you think about it, who makes you the most angry in your life? Is it general people on the street, or is it people that you're the closest to, that you feel the strongest emotional tie creates the most anger? The only thing I can say about a situation like this, she's trying to get away. She's bringing someone with her to help her get her belongings. But what we find, and I've seen this multiple occasions, you need to call the police to have them with you there when you're getting your stuff out of the house. And if they say they don't have somebody available, you go back another time. Because as I said, there's nothing more volatile, nothing more explosive than a domestic situation. And in this case, if what the authorities are saying is correct, he was laying in wait, he knew what he was going to do. You got to make that call. You got to get someone there with you in law enforcement. And we will do that. I know Chicago Police Department, it's policy, because we had an incident years back where same situation, the woman comes to get some stuff out of the house, the guy's in the house, he kills her with the police standing on the front porch. You can't have that happen. So if there's any way to prevent something like this, you got to have somebody with you.
Talk to me about how you think about this attack, right? This timeline here, because if you read the release from police, Ryan immediately chased Dustin, pushed past the mother, fired multiple shots. Then we know that Ryan turns the gun on the children in horrific fashion, fires additionally at Dustin, and then we know that he turns the gun on himself, and then leaves the mother, right? Leaves the mother alive. I think that says something too.
That says everything right there. You talk about he takes out the biggest threat first, right? The adult male. He's going to go after him first. The children, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm going to tell you this. He kills those children and leaves her alive, so she has to live with that every day for the remainder of her life. That's why that person did that. It's to make her suffer as much as he possibly could.
And him dying, right, means that not only there will be no prosecution, doesn't suffer the consequences of his purported actions.
No, I think he probably knew what his plan was going to be, and the way he can inflict the most damage. I mean, let's think about this. What would hurt somebody more than that? Nothing. And it's not an everyday occurrence where a man will kill his own children. It happens, but he made up his mind what his plan was going to be before he did it, and his plan was to hurt her as much as he possibly could.
And I want to add this. We now know more about those critical minutes in the driveway, and this is all thanks to a detailed update that police released the next day. It fills in just the devastating sequence of events. So police say that while this mother and Dustin were inside the house, they heard this 7-year-old cry out. When they went to check on him, they find Ryan Egan outside. According to witness statements, physical evidence, again, Egan starts chasing Dustin, pushes past the mother, fires the shots, turns the gun on the children, shot both boys, according to a post from a woman identifying herself as the grandmother. August was still strapped into his car seat. The grandma even writes that the children's mother begged him to kill her too, chose not to. And police also say that the mother reported that she carried her children back inside the home before first responders even arrived. You know, Will, in one hand, I imagine it's very difficult to be clinical about this and try to look at a crime scene and see a sequence of events and look at this without the emotion getting involved, because it is difficult to process somebody doing this in such a blatant and callous and disgusting way. And again, you know, adding the idea of this mother trying to plead, take my life too after all of this, and he wouldn't. Those details really tell another part of the story.
Absolutely, they do. And again, as we talked about before, this is a plan to inflict the most pain that he can inflict on this woman, and that's exactly what he did. So I guess in his eyes, it's mission accomplished. You don't have to face the consequences on this side of the realm anyway. And it's so devastating. And again, we go back to the fact that these domestic situations are so volatile and there's so much emotion and so much anger that, you know, it doesn't seem rational for us when we think about it. But in that person's mind, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And look, beyond the police reports, beyond this horrific crime, beyond the details, we go back to the human element of this. This is a story about the profound and beautiful lives that were lost, because in the days following this tragedy, the boy's mother began to share her memories online, painting a picture of these two little boys who were her entire world. Just days before this happened, she had celebrated her son Ren's 7th birthday. She wrote on Facebook, "Oh, what I wouldn't do to have that cheeky little blue-eyed baby back. But at the same time, it's awesome watching you grow into the responsible, smart, caring, loving little boy I know today. Mommy is so proud of you in so many ways." And just one day after the shooting, on November 20th, she posted that video of Ren pushing August in the swing. The caption she wrote is absolutely shattering. She said, "My babies were 7. 7 years and 7 months. My babies were 7. My babies are asleep, and I want to go to sleep with them. I want to wake up from this nightmare to my happy, smiling children. God, make this stop. It can't be real. God, please. God, make it stop. I carried them, God. I carried them. My whole life is gone." And then on November 22nd, she shared an even longer, more detailed post pouring the love out that she has for her children. She described Ren as her blue-eyed, beautiful boy with a heart of gold. She said he was the little heartthrob of his first grade class and that he loved bringing her love notes from school. She remembered her baby August as her newborn angel. She wrote that he loved orange foods like sweet potatoes and carrots, that his favorite song was Baby Beluga, and that he was a celebrity everywhere we went. You know, Will, you think about the journey that she has to now go on. You think about the journey that survivors have to go on, those who lose loved ones. What is it like for them? What do you anticipate for them? What is the help that they can get? Because I will just tell you, there was a GoFundMe that has been established for this grieving mother. And its description lays out, you know, the stark reality that she now faces. So the fundraisers to help with funeral expenses for Ren in August, and again, for that critical therapy that she will need to even begin to cope, for the basic living expenses that she's going to need while she grieves. Talk to me about that journey of these victims.
There's programs for victims where they can get help through the police department, through the county, through the state, that the help will be provided for them. You talk about the GoFundMe, and that's wonderful. That's people trying to do whatever they can. And in cases like this, what else can people do but try to donate a little something to help her get through the initial phase of this? But when we're talking about the trauma and the long-term trauma, I can't even imagine what this poor woman's going to have to go through for the rest of her life. You talk about clinically for law enforcement, it's pretty cut and dry. Once you find out how it went down, your case is pretty easy to write up. I don't want to, I just want to say that, like we talked about, just a clinical thing to try to not make it emotional and personal. As far as law enforcement goes, it's a pretty cut and dry case. There's forensics that have to be done and stuff like that. But as far as how this woman's going to proceed with the rest of her life, not only her, but the people around her, the grandparents, the community, the first responders who had to see it. This is something that is, mental health professionals are going to have to get involved with. And I think there's some available in Illinois anyway, for victims through the police department, through the county, through the state. Whatever it takes, it has to be provided for this poor woman.
Well, Svilar, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.